This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life gets easier with great assists, and State Farm is here to dish one your way. Get in touch over the phone or on the app to get the teammate you need. State Farm with the assist. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
You're tuned into Auto Intelligence, live from Auto Trader, where data, tools, and your preferences sync to make your car shopping smooth.
They're searching inventory.
Oh, yeah.
They find what you need.
They gon' find
and
it.
You can make a budget for your wallet to help you succeed. Pricing's precise and true.
So true.
It's smarter car shopping.
Ooh.
Just for you.
Oh, it's just for you. Ooh. Find your next ride at autotrader.com. Powered by Auto Intelligence.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 731, 741, whatever the heck it is, something like that, of the Duke Basketball Roundup. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to tell you that we've spent about 15 minutes of me dealing with computer problems. No fun. No fun at all. I'm Jason Evans. I'm here with my buddy Donald Wine. Donald, I'm not going to pretend like we haven't already done this once as we dealt with my computer problems. Welcome, sir. We're here to talk about the open practice, aren't we?
We are. And of course, Jason and I were not able to be there. We lament the fact that we weren't able to be there, but it looked like a lot of fun. From all the emails that we got from people who started on, and I know we're kind of jumping into it. We started out with the fact that it was a lot of fun, and people had enjoyed being able to get this first look at our team.
Yes, for sure. And just so folks understand, I want everybody to get how this, how our coverage of the open practice is going to work. Seeing as Donald and I were not there, we are joined now by Carl Heimel. Carl is a long time Duke fan. Carl, I believe you referenced peach baskets when we were discussing this a moment ago.
Peach baskets and Gene Banks. So I think I could trace my lineage back to around 78, to be honest.
I like it. I like just a few years before me. Carl and I have known each other for a long time. He is a very, very smart observer of Duke basketball. He is also part of a Substack called The Vector that he does along with a guy named Eric Rothschild, who is one of the smartest people I know, way smarter than I am. And Carl and Eric put both a humorous and also very insightful take on Duke basketball in The Vector. If you're someone who's looking for a good read about what's going on with the Duke team, check them out for sure. But Carl was at the open practice. And Carl, let me start with this. I saw photos. There were thousands of capacity was 5,000. There were thousands of people lined up outside hours in advance, weren't they? It was amazing, the scene.
I had a friend of mine over there who he had actually driven in from Tennessee, and he said he was going to be on campus around 1:00. And I told him to text me if the line starts forming. I got a text from him around 2:45 that said, "Get in your car and get over here." By the time I got there, the line had stretched from the upper entrance into Cameron in the newer section of in the newer concourse area up there, all the way out past the Duke stores, down the length of the soccer stadium. And I think I sent you a picture. We got there about 4:05, and our spot in line was right behind the far goal on the soccer field. So,
wow.
Yeah, but I will say this. They opened the doors up about 15 minutes early because I think they realized that people were excited to see some ball, and things moved in and packed up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and by the way, John Shire came out. Did he get to your point in line? Shire came out, was shaking hands, taking photos with people, just a man of the people, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, I've got that restraining order thing with John, but I can't. I'm not allowed to go that close. No, I walked by him on my way to the place, my spot in line. He did not get all the way back, the far back, but he was, I'm going to say, three-quarters of the way back to the end of the line, I think, when I saw him.
So when you think about, you know, Countdown to Craziness is a spectacle that has like a little bit of game, but it's mostly fun. Then you have, we've had some practice that people have been privy to that were just practices, right? Coaches cursing, that sort of thing. Like you get the full deal of what a practice looks like. Where did this fall overall? Was it more fun or was it more practice or is it just split down the middle of both?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I had the same thought going in that is it going to be basketball uh, or will I see Stanley Borden playing the saxophone? And of course, we weren't going to see Stanley this year, but I'll say that it was very much do a little bit of stretching, do a little bit of warm up drills, and let's give the people what they're here for. And then they went it right into like 3 8-minute scrimmages. It was more basketball than a practice. It was definitely more basketball than a countdown to crazy. And it was exactly what everybody wanted.
I want to start with the drills. I was the reports I heard, they didn't divide up by size. I've seen Duke do drills before where the bigs are at one basket, the guards wings at another basket, but they didn't divide up by size. The bigs were working on shooting and passing alongside the guards, which makes sense when you consider how good Cameron Boozer, Malik Brown, and Pat Gongba are at shooting and passing. Was that something you noted as well?
I think the biggest thing I noted, Jason, was that much of the drills was all about passing and positioning. They didn't actually take a shot until I'm going to say 15 minutes into the practice. After all, actually, maybe even a little longer when you factor the stretching in. The first series of drills was all about ball movement, move it quickly, reading the defense, finding the spot that drive, kick, move it around the perimeter. It was like watching Gene Hackman coach Hoosiers for a while there. There was just nothing but ball movement.
I love to hear that. I mean, that should be a hallmark of every Duke team. One of the things that we're going to, in addition to Carl, we're going to be incorporating a ton of comments from all of you who wrote to us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We got some great, lengthy, and really interesting summations of what all the different players did. But one of the people whose word I'm going upon here is Jim Sumner, who was talking about Substack and such. Jim Sumner has another brilliant Substack that you can subscribe to get comments about the Duke team. And Jim had a very funny line, I thought. He was talking about that in the drills that they were doing some drills where there was like three guys going against the managers or where the coaches, the assistant coaches are trying to interact with the players a little bit. And he said, you've never seen Matador defense until you've seen a manager trying to defend Cameron Boozer going in for a dunk, which I thought was very funny. And we also got a great note from Eric Hayden. Eric wrote to us and said, Tyler Thornton can still play great defense. He was swiping balls away from guys during drills. And Eric pointed out that's a great way to be stronger with the ball.
I mentioned when I was there that Duke has the best rotational defensive managers in America.
Yeah, but you know what? They are not paid to stand in the lane and attempt to block or take charges from any of those guys, most especially the big men. So they were getting, I don't know what if they get NIL deals, but I would try to secure one if I'm a manager after being told to stand in the lane against Cameron Boozer.
And Donald, there were a lot of business decisions being made at those moments.
I bet you they would. I bet you damn right.
I had asked people if they could, tell who the starters were, what the rotation was like. And virtually everyone who was there said there was no way to tell. John had them mixed up in every one of the scrimmages. There was nothing that was going on in the practices that gave an indication of who are the five guys that John wants. Although Carl just, as we sort of start getting to, some observations about individual players, I can't even count how many people said to me, Cameron Boozer and Isaiah Evans, those are the two best players in this team. Do you agree?
I think undoubtedly at this very moment, I think maybe Dame Sar has a chance to get into that Isaiah Evans strata, but he didn't show it yesterday. So I think that's a to be determined. But right now, it is undoubtedly those two. And then, Patrick Gongba showed really probably as good as I've seen him play at Duke yesterday.
Do you think also, I also, when you think of Slim, you think of a guy who loves to fill up the basket quickly, but the way that he plays his demonstrative affair is always a fan favorite, right? Because it gets the crowd behind a team. And as we know, as we saw last year, that can help momentum more than anything, right? If you hit a couple threes and you kind of clap your hands and get in people's faces, that can animate a crowd and get that momentum and that energy buzzing. What was it like yesterday? I know we saw the clip of him hitting the game winner I should say, of one of the scrimmages over Big Pat. But what was that kind of like? Were there guys kind of playing, again, playing for the show and giving the fans a little bit of energy and response to the energy that they were giving them?
No, not to spill all my candy in the lobby here, but in the Vector, our upcoming piece on this, one of the things that I note in there is that I'm trying to determine at what level of competition / what level of crowd is it that Isaiah Evans won't get hyped, right? He hit a big three, not even that three that you saw on the tape. He hit a three early on, and he's immediately turning to the crowd and giving the three fingers over the face move. I actually think that, like, if he is playing his cousin one-on-one in the driveway and the mailman stops to deliver the mail, Isaiah's going to be turning to him and hyping him up.
I love that we're starting here with Isaiah Evans, because I had so many people write to us and say that he showed that he's so much more than just a quick twitch shooter, that he's capable of going inside. There were some unofficial stats I found, and the unofficial stat person told me that Isaiah had 23 points in 24 minutes of playing time. Not bad. That he really was displaying some very nice creativity with his passing, that he's just clearly stronger than he was a year ago, not a string bean anymore, and that you can see that his game has developed a lot more variety than it had a year ago. You talk about the crowd. Someone said that he had everybody oohing and ahhing during drills and warmups with his dunks.
Yes.
And we had a listener, Eric Lott, who wrote in and said he was really impressed with Isaiah Evans's defense, and said that he's worked on getting better at that end of the floor. And Eric also noted that Isaiah stayed like 30 minutes after practice was over to sign autographs from a ton of adoring kids who were there just to see him. And Eric said he really embraces the Showtime Slim moniker for himself.
Yeah, he has no shortcomings in the personality department, but as Eric noted, I said the same thing, is that the way he scored last year, he was basically go out there, get the ball. If you got a glimpse, throw it up. That's the role he was given. This year, it's clear that he's being asked to do much, much more than that. He obviously he hit a bunch of threes, but he put the ball on the floor. He had some really, I think in the video that his mother posted, there was at least one really nice pull-up move in the lane. He's taken it to the rack. He's very much stronger. I don't know if Kevin Durant's always going to look like Kevin Durant. Isaiah's always going to look like Isaiah, but you can tell by the way he's playing, he's definitely more physical than he was last year. He was out there rebounding the ball, moving the ball around on offense, just a much more complete player than what you saw last year.
Here's something that again, playing to the effect of part show, part practice. The one thing that we saw last year that was the thing that the team hung its hat on was competitiveness. And that's something that John Shire has indicated more than once, that he wants that to be the mantra for this program. Again, in a practice where it is a little bit of a show for the fans that were in attendance, and you're trying to, make it a little bit fun and entertaining. But when it came down to the actual scrimmages, and I know they were split up for a few of them, did you see some of that competitiveness that leads you to believe that, hey, this team is going to be a tough out?
I think, when you're looking at last year vis-a-vis this year, I don't think we have anybody that's as emotive as what Cooper Flagg was. I mean, Cooper would do something sensational and he would celebrate the moment. Boozer is a guy who will just will his way to a bucket, but you won't see him flexing or stomping a whole lot after. At least in that environment, you didn't. But I have no doubt that he's a guy that would run over his family to go score and in fact, a couple times he did with his younger brother.
He gets to do that all year long.
Exactly. That's probably the incentive for Caden to get into the starting lineup so he doesn't have to practice against his brother in practice. But in terms of competitiveness, those two guys, and in a more quiet way, I think Nick is a guy that is highly competitive. Really, you don't play at Duke or Shire at this level and not have that competitive gene.
There's one guy I want to talk about in the return from the guys that are coming back that has, one of the guys that's had a meteoric rise. I'm sure we'll talk about the other in a minute, but the one I want to talk about is Big Pat Gongba. The fact that he has recovered from, the injuries that kind of cost him a lot during his freshman year, and even some of this offseason he's been in a boot and everyone's been worried about his progress. Sounds like his progress is more than fine. I saw a video before the practice a couple days ago of him hitting threes in traffic, which sure, if we're going to do that, then God bless anybody who plays him. But what did you see from him? Because I know a lot of people who wrote in and said that he was someone they thought stood out as a really, really good addition in that practice.
Yeah, at first I thought to myself, is this just because he's only going up against Iffy, right? Or with Malik Brown sitting the 5-on-5 stuff out, or is he going to be that good? And then after a while, I noticed that Iffy's actually not that bad of a defensive player. And the things Pat was doing, like last year, we saw glimpses of him putting the ball on the floor and like straight line driving to the basket. We saw a lot more of that. Obviously, when you get him the ball in the low post, he's got footwork and he's going to score. And then when you add in, I think Duke Blue Planet or Duke Basketball Twitter account referred to it as a pick and pat, where stepping out and hitting a three. I had to go look it up. Any ideas how many three-point attempts he had last year, the entire season?
None.
I mean, it may have been one or two. I'll look.
No need. It was one. So I'm going to set the over/under on him having at least one attempt a game this year, maybe more.
Wow.
I mean, that looks like it's part of the offense. So stronger, healthier, moving freely. Didn't really show any signs of like fatigue from the injuries holding him back during training. I would not be surprised to see him on an All-ACC team this year.
Well, Rod Baxley of the Fayetteville Observer had a number of notes on this practice. And one of the things that Rod said about Big Pat was that he said if he can stay healthy, he has a chance to be one of the best big men in the country, which I was like, wow, that is really impressive. We had a number of folks write to us and talk about how agile Pat looked, how outrageously good his hands seem to be, that the ball just sticks to him when he touches it. Several people pointed out that he's going to be the big lob threat this year, the same way Man was last year. Not saying he'll be as good at that as Man was, but that he's going to play that role in a pretty big way. Look, we already know he has great touch around the hoop. I was told that he scored 19 points in the scrimmage. That's a big number. I think I had him at 21.
which
Yeah,
is
somewhere in
a
that
bigger
ballpark.
number.
Yeah, I would still like Isaiah Evans had 23, Cam Boozer had 21. You say Pat had 21. I was told he had 19, but yeah, I mean he's right up there with Isaiah and Cam in terms of total scoring. And the last thing I wanted to mention about Pat was people said, he is great in this pick and roll, and he's also capable of making really great passes. So it feels like a guy that we only got a tiny, tiny glimpse of in terms of his ability a year ago.
Well, one more note on him, Jason and Donald. I don't know if you watched much of the NBA Summer League this year, but Kyle Filipowski had a really strong summer league. But there was one game because the summer league allows you to have 10 fouls. I think Kyle had 8 in one game.
Yeah,
I am pretty sure that Pat had 8 in 24 minutes of play yesterday. So that's going to be a concern. Him being able to stay on the floor without fouling.
Hey, I want to move us on really quickly to another one of the returnees who a lot of people are talking about as being somewhat impressive. Darren Harris, who seemed just way more confident than he was a year ago, draining everything in practice. Seems way more assertive on offense. People said, I was told he scored about 15 points in the 3 scrimmages, not handling the ball a lot. Like, even though Darren's going to play on the wing, he's not going to – we have other wings who are going to handle the ball a ton more than Darren does. He's kind of waiting out there, waiting for his shot. But it was pointed out to me that if he's the 9th guy in the rotation, then our 9th man is ridiculously dangerous, which is, a very exciting thing to hear. And we also had someone who noted that the reality with Darren is that he's just not athletically on a class with these other guys. Skill-wise, shooting, yes, absolutely. Maybe even the best on the team. But athletically, you can tell he's just a tiny bit not as quick as someone like an Isaiah Evans. And this person said it really, watching the scrimmage sort of pointed out to you, both these guys are snipers. But Isaiah is able to do it just a little tiny touch faster than Darren. What were your impressions of Darren Harris?
Yeah, very similar. Strong. Really, he and Isaiah both have more strength and more attributes to their game, at least based on what I saw last night, compared to where they were last year. The difference is that the floor that Isaiah Evans is starting from was of a guy who shot 40% from 3 last year, whereas Darren, who has always had the reputation of a good shooter, only shot about 23% from the 3 last year. So Darren's going to have a fight with Nick and Wilkins, I think, for that last wing role. But based on what he did yesterday, I think he's ahead of both those guys at the moment. That being said, of course, a lot of real positive buzz coming out about Nick as well.
So again, another returning player who has gotten some buzz this offseason for his change in stature is Caleb Foster. The fact that he looks like, I don't know if he's added weight or lost weight, but he has clearly gotten stronger and more defined. And again, from some of the practice video that I saw, it looks like he's able to get into the lane at will. And it's about what he does after that is the question, whether he goes up for the shot, whether he makes the right decision with a pass. Tell me what you saw from him, and in a year that, he's coming off a year that he started out as the starter. He then lost his starting spot to Sion James, figured out a way to, embrace the role of coming off of the bench despite some shaky moments, and really turned it on down the stretch. What did you see from him? Is he going to be a guy that you think is ready to lead this offense in his junior season?
I think as it stands right now, I think he is the starter at point guard. And I think that it's going to be a battle all year between he and Caden. And I think that you couldn't find 2 guys more opposite in the way they approach point guard than those 2 guys. Foster is, at least well, no, I think even on, over his 3 years at Duke, he is very aggressive. He wants to get that ball into the lane. He wants to drive it to the hoop. And he definitely, again, it was one practice against teammates, but he definitely was getting into the lane with a high degree of frequency. I think for me, though, the one thing that he did, there was a sequence in the, I think the third scrimmage where somebody missed a shot, a three, got the rebound, they kicked it out to him. He pump faked and he took 2 dribbles into the lane and then did a pull up. And last year and the year before, that's a shot that he tries to charge all the way to the basket with and either absorb contact or throw up a prayer. So it definitely feels like there's some additional elements to his game. I think that the competition with Caden is going to push him. And I think Caden's style is a little more conservative. I wouldn't call him a game manager, but people called Tom Brady a game manager at some point in his career too. But he's a guy though that it feels like he's going to be a more efficient player, but maybe not as productive. Right? You're going to see a lot of shots out of Foster. You're going to see a lot of passes where he's driving the lane and creating stuff. Caden's going to move the ball to the right guy on the perimeter, and he's going to be available on the perimeter when it's time for, when it's time for him to hit a shot. And he did that really, really well on Tuesday.
Regarding Caleb, I was told that he scored about 16 points across the 3 scrimmages.
Yep.
Folks said his outside shot, wasn't great. But yeah, as you guys noted, the ability to get in the lane, get that little floater anytime he wanted to. But I was really intrigued. We had a listener, Jackson Stokes, who wrote to us and said that he felt like Caleb controlled the pace all the time that he was in there. If he wanted it to go faster, it went faster. If he wanted it to slow down, it slowed down. And that's a important attribute for a guy who's going to have the ball probably as much as just about anybody on this team. And then the other thing a lot of people noted is that he is clearly the vocal leader of this team. He doesn't just do the Brotherhood podcast. He is the voice of this club because he's the most experienced player on the team in terms of time, playing time at Duke in the past. You agree with all that, Carl?
Yeah, I think although there's a lot, the one thing Duke has always stressed is be vocal on, especially on defense, right? And there were a lot of guys out there talking on defense yesterday, but Foster is he's definitely going to assert his upperclassman status there. It'll be interesting to see if we get the same out of Malik when he gets back out there as well.
I was, a couple of the people who emailed us said, hey, there's a lot of chatter on the floor, but you could always hear Caleb Foster speak. And I think and again, it's not like he's the loudest in the room is whatever, but I think when you have a guy who is in his 3rd year, as you mentioned, the only guy who's been here the longest at Duke, for him to be the loudest in the room means he is asserting the fact that, hey, I am a leader. And whether I'm dribbling the ball, whether I'm on the bench, you are going to hear me lead this team. And that is a change, right? We've had some guys who lead this team by example. We have some teams who are vocal. And it feels like Caleb wants to be a little bit of both.
All right, hey, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to get into some of these freshmen, the newest faces in Blue Devil uniforms. We'll have that in just a moment.
Summer is here. More sun, way more heat, more time to do all the things that make summer so special. And the number one thing you don't want to be doing all summer? Spending hours cooking. That's where Factor can help. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and delicious meals are ready in just 2 minutes, taking the hassle out of eating well.
Boy, that's right, Donald. Not only are they quick to heat up, you have a lot of options. You're not stuck with the same leftovers for the entire week. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. And if you're someone who does meal prep for the week, Factor's variety of options means you can have something different every single day, and you don't have to cook. Now you can get outside and enjoy some time with your loved ones.
So get started at factormeals.com/DukeBB50off. Use that code DukeBB50off to get 50% off, plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's factormeals.com/DukeBB50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Once again, factormeals.com/DukeBB50off.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
Walmart Business is in the business of helping your business. Regardless of whether you're building bridges, building spreadsheets, or building lesson plans. Ooh, that looks fun. Walmart Business can help save you time, money, and hassle so you can focus on what you're building instead of what your supply closet is missing. In short, we take care of business so you can do more with yours. We're the Walmart you love, now for your business. Learn more at business.walmart.com.
All right, we're back from the break. Donald and Jason, DVR podcast. We're joined by Carl Heimel, who was at the open practice. We have notes from all of you. We have video that we got from Isaiah Evans' mother that showed us a little bit of all this stuff. Just so much info. And we're going to turn now to the freshmen. And Carl, it has to start. We've already hit on this a little bit. It has to start with Cameron Boozer. I mentioned on our last podcast that I had heard rumors that they were going to run the offense through him a fair bit, that he was going to have the ball on the perimeter more than you maybe would have expected. Not to say he's exactly like Cooper Flagg was a year ago, but not to say they're entirely different either. And we had a number of people who confirmed that that's what it looked like. Cameron nailed multiple three-pointers. He was able to get to the rim as well. He scored 21 points, like I said earlier in the scrimmage. Rod Baxley of the Fayetteville Observer said he thought that Cameron looked every bit like the favorite for ACC Player of the Year. We had a listener, Jason Ashley, who said he's a better version of Paulo Banchero. Boy, Jason Ashley, just going out there with that, a better version of Paulo Banchero. He said because Cam is more fluid and has better handle than Paulo did. That said, there were some other folks who said Cam maybe is sort of slightly lesser version of Paulo Banchero because he doesn't quite finish around the basket quite as well. Do you want to, Carl, dare to get into what is Cameron Boozer to Paulo Banchero comparisons?
You're asking me to refilm Sophie's Choice here? Is that, I'm going to say that what I did not expect. I mean, I expected what I saw from Cameron Boozer, in that, like, if you run into Cameron Boozer, you bounce off Cameron Boozer, and he continues on his way, right? In the vector, the analogy I make is Bo Jackson running over Brian Bosworth into the end zone in football. But the thing I did not expect was he has more wiggle to his game than I anticipated. A lot of guys can handle the ball and they'll be a great straight line driver. And I think Paulo was a great straight line driver because he was so strong. But there was a point, I think at the end of the first scrimmage, where I didn't realize the clock was running out. And I thought to myself, that's a really aggressive shot, where Boozer put a little shake, not dissimilar from what you saw from Evans on his bucket, on his three that ended one of the scrimmage. Put a little shimmy, did a little sidestep, and hoisted up a three. Now, he missed, but it was not a bad shot at all. And then I think you could see it in some of the footage that Isaiah's mother posted. There was another time where he did a little bit of a shimmy out on the perimeter, and stepped in and had just a wide open mid-range jumper that he knocked down like it was a layup. So there's more nuance and finesse to his game than what I anticipated. Because I thought that if you're the son of Carlos Boozer and you're 250 pounds and 6'9", you're just going to go impose your will on everybody, and he does a lot of that. But he also can create a little bit more than what I was expecting.
Do you think also on defense that he stood out there as well? Because we've heard a lot about the fact that he's likely going to be one of those guys. He's not going to be necessarily rim protector, but double doubles in the form of points, rebounds are going to be something that we hear next to Cameron Boozer quite a bit. Again, in a scrimmage like that where everybody's good, everybody's elite, what did you see from him on the defensive end?
Yeah, he is not. Nobody's going to confuse him with Derek Lively or Mark Williams, right? That's not his game. But he's going to contest shots, and you're not going to go through him. He is just like I say, it's impossible to overstate just how physical he is in a casual way, right? If he's just standing there, he's anchored, and so you're not going to bounce him off. You're not going to move him off the blocks by putting a shoulder into him. So defensively, he'll get some blocks, but more importantly, he's going to alter a lot of times when people are thinking they're going to be able to get a path to the basket. And rebounding, he's always. I think he came out of the womb averaging 17 rebounds. So.
Yeah, I imagine that Carlos really taught them that element of grabbing the rebound and being in position. Let's shift to the shorter twin in Caden. You mentioned before about his battle with Caleb Foster for the starting point guard position and really just the playing time if you consider them one well-rounded position. But what did you see from him in this, again, that would make him stand out in that particular competition?
Again, not going to be a guy that makes any mistakes, or if he does, it's going to be very rare. He's really exceptionally sound with his decision making, and I was impressed with his shooting. If he gets his feet set, it feels like it's definitely going down. And so whereas Foster's going to get into the lane more, I think that you're going to see more nuanced reads out of Caden. And he had a couple, and again, if you've been passing to a guy for your entire life, you kind of know how they want the ball. He had a couple, like just little, I wouldn't call them lobs, but he had a couple of nice little lofted feeds into Cameron. I think that there's a non-zero chance that he dislodges Foster at some point. And if it does, we're in really good shape because Foster is looking very solid. And if Caden can outplay that, we're in really good shape. And I wouldn't be surprised to see either one of those guys getting a lot of minutes at the 2 spot as well.
One more thing about Caden from me, and this is not a bad thing, right? Twins have been with each other forever, right? They're twins. They were born together. They have grown up together. They have played ball together their entire career, and now they're going to be playing next year at Duke. And sometimes when that happens, not just with twins, but anyone who has played with another player for a very long time, you get that tunnel vision where in the chaos of everything on the court, you know that you can find your man, right? Whether he's down low or there's the corner, you know the tendencies of that guy. And again, did you see where there might be opportunities to use tunnel vision to our advantage? Because it's going to happen at some point because it's natural, but it shouldn't be viewed as a bad thing in this case. So did you see any opportunities there where he kind of goes, okay, there's a lot of things going on. Let me just find my brother.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, you can tell these guys have played a lot of basketball together. But I think the bigger thing is what it's not, which is what you highlighted. And that's like, it's not a detriment. I wouldn't say that he's, when he was playing in the scrimmages, he was playing with his brother. It wasn't look like he was looking solely to his brother as an outlet. Of course, he's played on some pretty high level teams with other good players besides his brother over the years.
Hey, just to button up the Caden thing, I just want to add in some of the stuff that we got from other listeners. Several people pointed out it's worth noting that Caden Boozer's team won each one. The scrimmages, there were 3 separate 8-minute scrimmages. They score started at 60-60 in every one of them, to sort of simulate the end of a game. And Caden Boozer's team won each and every one of those 3 scrimmages. A lot of folks noted that
hold on a second.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. The other thing that really there's a bit of an asterisk to that as well, though, because on every one of those teams it was also Isaiah Evans, so it helps.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. Isaiah also won all 3 of the scrimmages then. But folks said that Caden just looks more like a pure point guard than Caleb does, or than that Duke has had in a while. A lot of people said his shot looks a little bit flat. Carl, you noticed that as well. It goes in, but it, like his release is a little low, and the shot just seems a little flat.
I did not see that, but then again, they may be like comparing him to his brother, where Cameron gives the punt team a lot of time to get downfield on his shots to cover the. He's got a very high lofting shot, but I didn't see Caden didn't appear particularly flat to me. The one thing that I did notice about his shot was, like I said, he really gets a solid base when he's shooting. You see guys where their knees come together during the shooting process. Not him. He is really fundamentally strong. Didn't really pay a lot of attention to the arc on the ball, though. So.
Last thing I want to mention about Caden is there are several folks who pointed out he's very disruptive on defense. And in fact, Rod Baxley of the Fayetteville Observer said that he thought Caden's the most impressive all-around player in terms of all the different things he does, all the different aspects of the game that he impacts, which I thought was very, very high praise. All right, I want to move on to a guy that there were, big expectations for, Dame Sarr. Super long, super athletic, but really fell short. I think a lot of people expected him to look like maybe the second or third best player out there. And most of the reports I read were like that was not the case. He was a little bit inefficient, that he really struggled with his shot, especially in the scrimmages. Displayed good handle, actually played a little bit of point guard at times, people said, was bringing the ball up the court. But like listener Jason Ashley said, that strength was an issue for him. He was getting bumped off his spot. He got stripped a few times. He did have the dunk of the day. People talked about that. He is an elite cutter, and he will be a backdoor threat at all times. And he's, disruptive, a menace on defense. But Dame wasn't the offensive explosion I think that people expected.
100% agree with all of that. I watched him. He was actually one of the first people to come out. I think the practice started at 5:30. He was on the floor at like probably 5:10 taking shots, and I watched him struggle on open threes, and then watched him get into a rhythm and knock down 8 or 9 in a row. And I thought, okay, and then the lights came on, and he did knock down 1 3 in the scrimmages. He did have, as you say, the dunk of the day, but I think the expectations were much higher. But again, if you listen to all the backdoor rumblings coming out of Cameron or out of the K Center, I think the expectations from the coaching staff are still very, very high on Sarr.
Another guy who we've talked about a little bit on this show this summer, again, getting some similar buzz to Con Knipple. He is not the same player, but is at least getting similar buzz, is Nick Haminia. And some people, it's funny, some people talked about his hair, that it's kind of grown out a little bit and that he might need to investigate a barbershop in Durham. But to his credit, he hasn't been in Durham that long. He's been doing Team USA stuff and doing some of that circuit. So he hasn't been in Durham that long. So, if we can get him a barber, that'd be good. But his game on the court, what about it stood out to you?
He really didn't knock down shots like he can. So he shot the ball atypically poorly. But he didn't, I wouldn't say he didn't he didn't stand out in any other way out there. But again, I think it's kind of the same story. I try to remember that with him and with Sarr, it's the first time these guys have put on a Duke uniform in front of a crowd, right? And so and especially in the case of Nick, he spent the first part of the summer, over in playing for the U19 squad. So I think that both of those guys have some catch up to do. You hear that Shire is really, really high on Nick as well as Sarr, and you got to remind yourself that I just watched 24 minutes worth of live action. I'm not going to be the expert here, but if I were judging it solely on what I saw on the floor right now, I got Darren Harris ahead of both he and Wilkins in that battle for that last wing reserve role.
Yeah, Jim Sumner wrote this line about Nick Homenia. He said he couldn't throw the ball in the ocean from the end of a pier. Ouch. But people noted he was aggressive and confident looking for his shot. It wasn't going down, but I think there's enough evidence, there's enough tape on Nick that we know that it will go down in time. There are a couple of folks who noted that he needs to get stronger. The other thing I heard about him that several people said was that he's a great connector. He has great feel for the game, and that even in these scrimmages when he was really struggling with his shot, where things maybe weren't going as easily as they could, his feel for the game shows through, and that he's going to have a role on this team. Likely not as a starter. The Kahn comparisons to me are so unfair. People, they see a white guy, frankly, who's a great outside shooter and has good size for the wing, and they go, "Oh, he must be the same as Kahn Knippel," and they're ranked similarly. They're both ranked in the teens, coming out of high school. Folks, Kahn Knippel played like one of the top 3 freshmen in the country last year. I'm not exaggerating with that. I mean, in terms of production, Kahn Knippel was easily among the top 3 or 4 freshmen in the country a year ago. He outplayed his ranking. To expect Nick Homenia, who's also ranked in the teens, to suddenly be one of the top 3 freshmen, that doesn't make sense. It's not going to happen. And I think it's really unfair that so many people are tying their names together.
Well, to be fair, I think when I say buzz similar to that of Kahn Knippel, it's a kid who was seemingly come out of nowhere, right? Like this time last year, very few people were saying, "Yo, Kahn Knippel's that dude." Right. Jason, you and I during the summer, we kind of heard those things. We were like, okay, we need to see what this is like. Again, what I commend this program and Jon Scheyer on doing is opening up this squad to not just the visibility, but the vulnerability of, Dame Sarr and Nick Homenia having a bad night, right? They're having a bad day in front of, or at least not a day that didn't live up to expectations. But this is just one practice. We've heard that buzz all summer, and that buzz is there for a reason. And we've seen some of the flashes of brilliance, and this is the summer where these guys start to try and put all of this together. It's by no means a finished product, but I will say, when it comes to Nick, there's going to be days where if you're a guy who can shoot, some days you ain't got it. We saw that last year with Slim. There were, we had Auburn games, and then we had games where he was 0 for 5, and you're, a few minutes in, you're like, okay, this is not Slim's night, and you kind of went in another direction. So I think what Jon Scheyer and the coaching staff are hoping they do is develop some consistency where you're not getting those either or situations, but it's bound to happen, and especially with freshmen. So for those there who may have said, walked away saying, I'm not sure about Nick Homenia, Dame Sarr, give them some grace. It was one practice. They've been practicing all summer, and this is before the real practices begin. So these guys are going to get a lot better, and they're going to have better days.
Hey, Carl, I want to wrap up really fast on Sebastian Wilkins. A lot of people said, look, the guy looks great in warmups. Elite athlete, looks very confident taking his shot and gets that three-pointer off very nicely. But when it came time for the scrimmages, I don't want to say he was absent, but not much of an impact. Doesn't look like I guess if Duke goes 10 deep, but looks like he's the 10th man, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, again, I'll preface everything with limited sample size, and I'd also say that I'm the guy last year that thought that that Isaiah Evans was going to play 38 minutes a game, and Con Knipple was going to get 2 minutes. So I probably wear my idiocy on my sleeve there. I, I just appreciate the fact that Sebastian Wilkins pretty much turned down what I would think to be a guaranteed, if not starting, at least top 6 role at Maryland, and said, no, I want all the smoke, and I'm coming down to Durham where I have to fight to be the 10th man to the 9th man or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, we've noted that in this podcast before. It is a reason to really appreciate and admire that kid and what he's trying to do. Hey, I just want to actually, Donald, you wanted to ask a question about Ife Ifuchukwu. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we think about the 3 guys seemingly at the end of the bench, Cam Sheffield, Jack Scott, and Ife Ifuchukwu, it feels like Ife, we got some mixed reports from him, from people who went, because people were kind of in their brains of, yes, this guy's not going to play that much. But then they see him on the court, they go, that guy's massive. He's big. He actually has some touch around the rim. Maybe, just maybe, he could figure out a way to crack into this rotation, particularly if we have foul trouble or something like that. I don't think you need to settle it here on the show, but what did you see from him that gave you promise that he might be able to compete? And then also just realistically, what did you see from him that, kind of puts him further down this rotation?
I'll put it in perspective for you. I watched Josh Harrison score like 25 points in a blue-white game one year. I watched Christian Reeves score 14 points in a blue-white
Christian
game.
Reeves, yeah.
So I think he got he scored some points. I think I had him somewhere around 8, which is not terrible, especially if you're talking about your 4th big man off the bench or whatever. But I think he is. My expectation for him would be he's a practice body. He's going to push guys. But if Duke has to play him in meaningful minutes, it means something has gone really bad in terms of injuries or fouls.
Hey, I just want to close on one quick parting thought, because the fact that Crazy Cast, supposedly video shot by Isaiah Evans' mom, the fact that Crazy Cast posted 15 minutes of these scrimmages, it let us get a real look at this stuff. And I will say, warts and all, what I saw was not a polished team. And we need to look at the calendar and remember, it was August 4th, or 5th, whatever. What was the date? I guess it was the 5th. Sorry, not the 4th. It was the 5th. In any event, it was early August. I didn't see them running sets that nearly look like what you would run during the regular season. All the timing seemed a tad off, like they're doing pick and rolls, but they weren't quite entirely sure exactly who was going to roll and win. Look, they've mostly been doing summer workouts, which means a lot of skills work, not a lot of formal practice, in terms of here's what the rotation is going to look like. Here's what the offense is going to look like. You just didn't see the same crisp, purposeful movement or the anticipation, the fluidity that we saw from Duke a year ago. But it's because it's August. I don't know that Jon Scheyer is going to do this in multiple seasons. But he gave us a very early glimpse here, and they look like they have a lot of work to go even before the blue-white scrimmage.
To that point, Jason, I don't know if you guys have jobs and are important captains of industry and everything. You probably didn't see the Duke Blue Planet that dropped today, but in there, Scheyer specifically noted that while the team has practiced, they've not run any plays. They've run sets or concepts, right, of spacing, but they haven't put any offense in yet. So what you were seeing there is definitely far from a finished product.
Yeah, and my point was you could tell.
Yeah,
and in theory, right, like again, if we had done this last year, we might have seen just as unpolished a team, because back then, if you recall, Jon Scheyer was like, yeah, I haven't really given them any plays. I've just let them kind of run sets and kind of go based on feel, because he wanted his team to mimic kind of what they do in the NBA. The NBA doesn't have a lot of structured plays. They have a lot of concepts, and you kind of go, okay, you guys are professionals, go figure it out. Towards the middle of the season, he did institute some like rigid plays that he could run at different times when he thought that they needed a kind of a reset. And so because of that, early in the season, you got what was a little bit of organized chaos. Everyone knew where they were supposed to be, but it wasn't all quite there, and they still were working on getting that timing down. I think this was a great way to, again, under the lights, in front of fans. You have referees there who are calling fouls. You had people, with the wristbands on, I guess, being told to boo the other team that the color wristband was on, because they wanted to get some of those things down to give them that thing, that kind of inkling of, this is not a practice. This is a little bit more than a practice, and this is us practicing for what will be the real thing in front of 20,000 seat arenas, with everybody in the gym trying to force us to lose through their noise, on free throw lines, with referees who aren't going to be calling the right fouls every single time. And so the organized chaos is going to reduce every day until at some point you're like, this is a well-oiled machine that either comes at the beginning of the season, it could come at the end of the season. Hopefully it's the first Monday in April. So you have this, I'm glad that, again, we got this look so early, because, again, it does increase that vulnerability of, they can look at this tape and go, okay, now what do we really need to work on, so that when fall practice does start, they're even more ready for that.
Donald, I just want you to know that I took that cheer for the blue or the white team to extremes. I had a white wristband and complained to the refs that the Blues were getting all the calls. I think I may have actually said, we never get a call in this building. So
Isaiah's mom, you could hear her on the live stream, and she's like, of course, yelling for her son, but whenever somebody on the other team like did something and foul, they're like, that's a foul, ref, that's a foul. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you're like. She's like, I don't care if my boy's on white, blue, it doesn't matter. Like, other team is getting that smoke, and you can tell where he gets it from. Like the familiar history of smoke giving is right there. But I like the fact that they kind of did that. And again, we always say that there's only 2 times that you enter Cameron to cheer against Duke. It was really one. It's really countdown to craziness where you're cheering against Duke, and that's really by design. But this was one where they kind of, again, wanted a little bit of that, because, as we've talked about, they are going to have a lot of games away from Cameron this in the early part of this year, and so they want to be ready for that, especially.
All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here. Latest edition of the DBR podcast. Carl Hanmel, thanks so much for your expertise. Thanks so much for your observations. Thanks so much for your humor. That's going to wrap it up. He's Donald. I'm Jason. We'll be back at you very, very soon as there's more Duke news to talk about. Until then, have a listen to the Duke Band as they play us out and take us home.